Hello everyone. I'm going to be showing you how to shorten the cables on your Connex antennas. Just a word of warning, if you do this it'll probably void the warranty on your Connex. So if you care about that type of thing, don't do this. Alright, let's get into it. So on these PCB antennas you'll see it has a little bit of potting compound. I don't know if you can see that in the light or not. Maybe if I can get it just right. You just need to scrape that off. But when you scrape it off, you need to be careful not to scratch this PCB because it's got some traces in there, and that's the actual antenna. So use something soft. I use my fingernail because I haven't cut my nails in a little bit. You can use that and just kind of gently scrape it from the edges, and it'll come up, and then you'll start to see the coax inside there. Just keep scraping. Like I said, just be careful that you don't scrape the PCB at all. So don't use something like a screwdriver or a knife or something like that. You want to be kind of careful with it. And just take your time. It'll come up. You could also use a little bit of heat, a little heat gun that would help it come off the PCB. But you want to get it to look something like that. So you can kind of see the, if I can get the camera to focus, which it doesn't want to, you can see it there. Alright, now we're going to desolder it. So just take your soldering iron, and this is lead-free solder on here, so you may have to turn your soldering iron up a little bit. And I'm going to heat up the outside, the ground, the shielding first. So just let that heat up and gently pull on it and it'll come off. You don't want to pull hard because you can pull up the pads. You definitely don't want to do that. Also, another trick that can help, if you have some of your own solder, you can add a little bit of your own solder to it, and that'll help it all melt there. There we go. Cable's off. And now you can see the two connection points for the center wire inside the coax, and then the outside shielding itself is the bottom one. So I'm just going to rub that a little bit and get any more of that potting compound off. There you go. And we can turn our attention to the cable. So you want to measure out your cable and your quad however long you need it. On this one, you just cut the cable. And you want to get a nice pair of wire strippers, and you want to make sure you use the correct size. You don't want to cut into that shielding that's around it because you need that. So I believe this is like a 22 gauge. 20 gauge, excuse me. So use the 20 gauge size, and that's going to leave you with the coax with the outside shielding part, and you're just going to use your finger and kind of bend that back a little bit, and that's going to reveal the inner wire that has some insulation around it. You're going to keep bending back that outside shielding, and I like to just kind of move it around, bring it around to one side, and then twist it together. I hope this is all showing up on the camera for you guys. Alright, there we go. So that's pretty well together. I'm just going to kind of bunch it up. So hopefully you can see that. So it's all together and bunched up, and you want to double check, if you need some magnifying glass or something, make sure you don't have any stray wires from the shielding, so that when you solder this center wire, you don't want any stray wires getting in contact with that. So we're just going to strip a very short amount of this center wire, and I'm talking real small, just like a millimeter is fine. There you go. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of flux. You can either use a flux pen or one of these syringes full of flux right on top of the pads there, and apply a little bit of heat just to clean those up. There we go. And then I'm going to add a drop of my own solder. There we go. Now I'm going to tin the outside shielding as well as the inner wire. I'm just going to double check and make sure that I don't have any stray shielding wires. You have to excuse that sound, that's my charger. Alright, so here we go. Just going to tin this outside shielding wire and then tin the inner wire. Alright, clean off the tip, and we're ready to solder it back onto the antenna. So I like to solder the inner wire first, and it's a real thin wire, just takes a real small amount. Now, because it's so small, I kind of like to use a screwdriver here. That'll soak up some of the heat as it's coming back up the wire, and then you can kind of push it down, get it right on there, right on that pad. There we go. That's what we want. So now all I need to do now is triple check that I don't have any of those shielding wires, and then apply heat and solder those to the other pad. Add a little bit more solder. There. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Then you can take some rubbing alcohol and clean off the flux if you want to. The next thing you're going to do is you can just take some hot glue or some epoxy and put that around the connection here, just to add a little bit of strength, so that way if it gets pulled, it will pull on that epoxy instead of straight off the PCB. And there you go. Now we have a nice short antenna cable for our Connex. Alright, thanks guys for watching. Hopefully this helps.